Hello, everyone. Today, I have a story for you that is more than just a lesson in English. It is a blueprint for a transformed life. We often hear people say they want success, they want freedom, and they want greatness. But there is a fundamental law of the universe that many choose to ignore. Nothing is free. This story is about Leo, a young man who lived in the shadows of mountains and the grip of poverty. It's a story about the high price of dreams and the incredible person you become when you are willing to pay that price. If you've been feeling stuck, or if you feel like the world owes you something, listen closely. This story might just change your perspective forever. Chapter 1: The Weight of the Stars. In a small, quiet town tucked away in the jagged creases of the mountains lived Leo. At 20 years old, Leo was a man of quiet observation and loud ambitions. While other young men his age were content with the slow pace of mountain life, Leo felt a constant, itching fire in his chest. He didn't just want a job, he wanted to build an empire. He dreamed of a chain of restaurants, of polished floors, the clinking of fine cutlery, and the bustling energy of a successful business. But the reality of his life was a stark contrast to those golden dreams. Leo lived in a house where the floorboards creaked under the weight of worry. His father, Mark, was a mechanic whose hands were permanently stained with the black grease of engines that were often older than Leo himself. His mother, Claire, spent her days scrubbing the floors of the wealthy, her back aching from the labor of cleaning houses she could never afford to live in. Then there was Sophie, his 10-year-old sister. To Sophie, Leo was a giant, a hero who could fix anything. But Leo felt like a fraud. How could he be a hero when he couldn't even buy his sister a new pair of shoes? One Tuesday evening, the mountain air felt particularly sharp. Leo sat on a rusted bench outside their home, staring up at the stars. The stars looked like diamonds, but to Leo, they looked like reminders of everything he couldn't reach. "I want to give them everything," he whispered into the dark. "But how do you build a palace when you don't even have the clay for a single brick?" Chapter 2: The Price of a Dream. The following morning, Leo approached his father in the garage. Mark was hunched over a broken radiator, the smell of gasoline heavy in the air. "Dad," Leo started, his voice steady but filled with yearning. "I'm going to do it. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to change our lives." Mark stopped working. He wiped his hands on a rag and looked at his son with eyes that had seen too many disappointments. "Leo," he said softly, "dreams are beautiful things to have in your head, but they are expensive to bring into the world. You have to understand something right now. Dreams are not free. If you want a life that others don't have, you must do what others aren't willing to do. Start where you are. Use what you have, even if all you have is the dirt under your fingernails." Leo didn't just hear those words. He felt them. He realized he had been waiting for a lucky break. But luck is a ghost that rarely visits the desperate. He needed a plan. He looked around his town. It was a place of simple needs. One thing he noticed was that everyone loved fresh, crusty bread. However, the only quality bakery was miles away, across the valley. People had to settle for stale grocery store loaves or make a long trek. "I will bring the bread to them," Leo decided. Chapter 3: The Grumpy Gatekeeper. The nearest baker was a man named Mr. Anderson. He was a legend in the valley, not just for his sourdough, but for his sour personality. He was a man who believed the world was full of shortcuts and lazy people. Leo walked 6 miles to reach the bakery. When he arrived, The smell of yeast and warm sugar hit him like a physical wave. He found Mr. Anderson pulling trays from a massive stone oven. "Mr. Anderson," Leo began, his heart hammering against his ribs, "I have a proposal. I want to sell your bread in my town, but I don't have the capital to buy it from you yet." Mr. Anderson stopped and looked Leo up and down. "So, you want me to give you my hard work for free? Do I look like a charity boy?" "No, sir," Leo said, standing taller. "I'm asking for a week of trust. Give me the bread on credit. I will walk it back to my town. I will sell every loaf, and at the end of the week, I will pay you your full price, plus a premium for the risk you're taking. If I fail, you never have to see my face again." Mr. Anderson leaned on his wooden paddle. "And why should I trust a boy with nothing but a silver tongue?" Leo's response was immediate. "Because I am determined. Because I have a family that needs me. And because I know that if I fail you, I am failing myself. I am willing to work harder than anyone you've ever met." There was a long, suffocating silence. Finally, Anderson grunted. "1 week. If you're a cent short, don't bother walking back. Chapter 4. The Hustle. The first week was a blur of exhaustion. Leo would wake up at 3:30 a.m. while the moon was still high. He would walk to the bakery, load a heavy crate of bread onto his back, and trek back to town. He set up a small wooden crate near the park. At first, people walked by without looking. They were used to their routine. "Fresh bread! Still warm from Mr. Anderson's oven!" Leo shouted. His voice felt thin in the morning air, but he didn't stop. He started offering small, bite-sized samples. Once people tasted the quality, the tide turned. By the end of the first day, his crate was empty. By the end of the week, he returned to Mr. Anderson and placed a stack of crumpled bills on the counter. He had paid his debt and kept a small profit, just enough to buy Sophie a book and his mother some tea. For 2 months, this was Leo's life. The skin on his feet grew calloused. His shoulders ached from the weight of the crates. But his bank account was growing, and more importantly, his reputation was growing. He bought a small cart, which allowed him to transport 3 times as much bread. He was no longer just a boy with a dream. He was Leo the Bread Man. Chapter 5. The Pivot to Mastery. Success brings comfort, and comfort is the enemy of growth. One afternoon, a regular customer named Mrs. Gable said, "Leo, the bread is wonderful, but imagine how much fresher it would be if you baked it right here in town. You're a salesman, but why not be a creator?" The comment haunted Leo. He realized that as long as he was just selling Mr. Anderson's bread, he was a middleman. He was limited by Anderson's prices and Anderson's schedule. But Leo knew nothing about baking. He knew how to sell, not how to create. He realized that this was his next price to pay. Nothing is free, including knowledge. He went back to Mr. Anderson. "Teach me," Leo said. Anderson laughed. "Why would I train my own competition?" Leo looked the old man in the eye. "Because you won't live forever, and your craft deserves to live on. If you teach me, I will continue to buy my flour and supplies through you. I will honor the man who gave me my start." Anderson saw a reflection of his younger self in Leo. "Fine, but baking is a science of patience. 3 a.m. Don't be late." The next month was the hardest of Leo's life. He would work all day selling and then spend his nights in the heat of the bakery. His first loaves were disasters. Some were as hard as mountain rocks. Others were raw and gooey in the middle. He burned his forearms on the oven doors. He felt the sting of failure over and over again. One night, after a particularly bad batch, Leo sat on the floor of the bakery and cried. He was exhausted. He wanted to go back to just selling. But then he remembered the law. Nothing is free. If he wanted the profit of a master baker, he had to pay the price of a struggling apprentice. He stood up, wiped his face, and started a new batch of dough. Chapter 6. The Rivalry. Eventually, Leo mastered the craft. He moved his operations to his own town, renting a tiny space with an old oven. He was happy. He was successful. Then, the fancy bakery arrived. A man named Eric, backed by wealthy investors, opened a shop right across the street. It had neon signs, expensive glass displays, and a marketing budget Leo couldn't dream of. Eric's shop was the new thing. People are naturally attracted to the shiny and the new. Leo watched as his loyal customers began to drift across the street. Leo felt a familiar coldness in his stomach, fear. But instead of getting angry, Leo got curious. He didn't hide in his shop. He walked into Eric's bakery. He bought a cupcake. He observed. He saw that while the shop was beautiful, the service was cold. The bread was made by machines, not hands. It lacked the soul of a local bake. Leo went back to his shop and didn't try to copy Eric. Instead, he doubled down on his own strengths. He began to learn intricate cake decorating from books at the library. He started Leo's loyalty program, where he would give a free loaf to families who were struggling, just like his used to. He realized that a business isn't just about the product, it's about the connection. Slowly, the town realized that while Eric had the better decorations, Leo had the better heart. The customers came back, not out of pity, but out of respect. Chapter 7. The Trial by Fire. Just when life seemed perfect, disaster struck. A massive electrical storm rolled over the mountains. A bolt of lightning hit the power lines near Leo's shop, causing a surge that started a grease fire in his kitchen. Leo arrived at midnight to see smoke pouring out of his windows. He fought the fire himself with an extinguisher until the fire department arrived. The fire was put out, but the damage was devastating. His expensive ovens were ruined. The walls were black with soot. The smell of smoke replaced the smell of fresh bread. The next morning, the town stood around the charred remains. "Poor Leo," they whispered. "He worked so hard just for it to end like this." Leo stood in the middle of his ruined shop. He felt like a part of him had died. He looked at his father, who had come to help. "I have to start over again, Dad," Leo said, his voice breaking. "I have nothing left." Mark put a hand on his son's shoulder. "You have your hands, you have your knowledge, and you have the respect of this town. Those are things fire cannot touch. Remember, nothing is free. Success is a lease, and the rent is due every single day." Leo didn't wait for an insurance check that might never come. He dragged his old cart out of storage. He cleaned it. He went back to Mr. Anderson and asked to use his oven during the off hours. The town saw Leo back on the street the very next day, selling bread from a cart with a soot-stained apron and a determined smile. They didn't just see a baker, they saw a warrior. The community rallied. People didn't just buy bread, they dropped extra coins into a jar labeled "Rebuild Leo's." Within 3 months, Leo's Fresh Bakes reopened. It wasn't just a shop anymore, it was a landmark. The conclusion, the lesson of the bread. Years later, Leo's Fresh Bakes became exactly what he had dreamed of, a chain of successful, warm, and inviting bakeries across the region. He had moved his parents into a beautiful home. Sophie was at a top university. Leo often stood at the window of his flagship store, watching the young people walk by. Sometimes, a teenager would come in and ask him for the secret to his success. Leo would always give them the same answer. He would hand them a warm piece of bread and say, "The secret is that there is no secret. There are no shortcuts. There is no such thing as a free lunch, a free dream, or a free life. If you want the bread, you have to knead the dough. If you want the heat, you have to tend the fire. Nothing is free, but I promise you, everything is possible if you are willing to pay the price." Closing summary and lessons. As we finish Leo's story, let's look at the 4 pillars of his journey. 1. Dreams are not free. They require the currency of sweat and sacrifice. 2. Failure is a teacher. Every burnt loaf of bread taught Leo how to make a perfect one. 3. Help yourself. First, when the town saw Leo fighting for his business after the fire, they wanted to join the fight. People help those who refuse to quit. 1. 4. The rent is due every day. Success is never permanent. You must earn your place in the world every single morning. Thank you for listening. Now, go out there and start paying the price for the life you want. Because, remember, nothing is free.